Coming up on this episode of One-on-One Sports,
we'll talk some Formula One racing,
discuss the early stages of the MLB season,
and break down the NFL draft.
All that and so much more.
And it all starts
right now. Hello and welcome to this episode of One-on-One Sports. I'm Matt Holzapfel.
And I'm Andrew Vandellis. Another great week for sports means that we have a ton to talk about. So let's kick it all off with the quick hitters. Despite an NHL record-tying 62-win regular season, the Tampa Bay Lightning were swept in the first round of the NHL playoffs. The Lightning were a favorite to win the Stanley Cup. They were sent packing by who else but the Columbus Blue Jackets in shocking fashion. Matt, what went wrong with the Lightning in this first round?
Well, they coasted. They had such a good regular season that they came in saying, there's no way we lose in round one, and they did. That's exactly what happened. They let off the gas after a phenomenal first period in game one, and they were gone. That was it. There was no coming back for that. They outscored Columbus 3-0 in the first period of game one, right? During the regular season, they outscored them 7-0 in the first period to their three matchups. So they expected things to continue the way they were, and that's what happens. You get complacent, you expect to win, and you lose.
Exactly. They didn't adapt at all. They had a season-best power play percentage, 28% around there. But against Columbus, they were only 1 for 6. The entire series went up a man. They didn't want it more than the Blue Jackets either. They only held the lead in game one for one period. One period they held the lead in the entire series. And they're the first team to win the President's Trophy and not win a single playoff
game. Which is a dubious distinction.
Columbus has never won a playoff series, and it's a disaster. And you know it's bad when Nikita Kucherov, a Hart Trophy candidate, one of the best players in the league, says, it just wasn't our time this year.
And to your point, you mentioned period one of game one. In games 2, 3, 4, Columbus outscored the Lightning 4-1 in the first period. So the first periods were owned by Columbus after game one, and that's why they won the series.
You think it would set a tone for them as well, but then they don't do anything to adapt to that game plan, and they're just kind of like, oh well, all of the signs pointed to them crushing Columbus and the East. All of the potential they could have had throughout the entire series and season, and then some. And 3 words sum up what they did. You blew it.
Goes to show you can't ride your reputation, you got to prove it.
Definitely.
Among the many people who praised the historic Masters performance by Tiger Woods was NBA legend Michael Jordan. During an interview with The Athletic, Jordan claimed that Tiger's journey was, quote, the best comeback he'd ever seen. Andrew, do you agree with Jordan's statement?
Of the last decade, at least, if not of our lifetime, and the one before it. Injuries, off-course scandals, everything we mentioned last week. The list goes on. And even if it isn't to some people, real recognizes real, Matt. MJ saying this about Woods is huge. No matter how you feel about it, I personally think so.
No disrespect to Tiger Woods. This is not what this is about. This is not about Tiger. This is about somebody else. The greatest comeback in sports by an individual is Roger Federer, and that is not debatable. Sorry, Tiger Woods. From 2003 to 2012, Federer won 17 Grand Slams, the most in ATP history, and spent 302 weeks as the world number one. Following his victory at Wimbledon in 2012, he then went 5 years without a Grand Slam win, including a brief hiatus from the sport with a knee injury. He comes back in 2017, wins the Aussie Open, then the Wimbledon, and then the next Aussie Open, gets back to number 4 in the world, the greatest comeback in sports history, point blank, period.
A lot of Googling right there. I see you've done your research.
I played tennis in high school. I'm an avid tennis fan. Thank you very much.
11 years without a major. You know, his first Masters since then as well. And he, I think, is only going to go upwards. I really want to see Tiger come back fully. But I really think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I said,
this is not about Tiger. I just think Federer's was more impressive given how long he was at the top versus how long he was not at the top.
And 2 great athletes, 2 equally great, hopefully, comebacks. This past week, the NFL schedule was released, and many fans found it to be controversial. While fans of teams like the Cowboys and the Packers saw a high number of primetime games, others weren't as fortunate. Teams like the Panthers and the Lions just have 1 primetime game scheduled, while the Buffalo Bills don't have any. Matt, do you see an issue with this?
No, I don't. Why should the Bills be playing in primetime? Look, the 2 most watched games last year included 1, Dallas, and 2, Green Bay. And yes, neither one of them had historically great seasons. Green Bay missed the playoffs, and Dallas was a disappointment once they got to the playoffs. But look, point blank, these teams are winning, and they're drawing in viewers. And so why
the Packers are winning?
No, I said historically. So I'm going to get there, right? Historically, the Packers win games. And yes, they've been in turmoil. Yes, their past few seasons haven't been great. but you have to go for historical success when you make the schedule.
I get it. The marquee names or whatever, as you mentioned, Green Bay, Chicago, Week 1. One of the greatest comebacks by Aaron Rodgers. I see the appeal in rivalry matchups like the NFC North, but we really don't know how any of these teams are going to perform, which is sad. That's the toss-up there. It's a gift and a curse because 9 times out of 10, at least when I watch primetime games, you either get a really close one-possession game or a blowout, and I don't want to see the latter, but I do have issues with teams like Green Bay who haven't been relevant in the last 3 years, getting spots over other teams. Why Pittsburgh? Hold on, Matt.
Okay.
Why Pittsburgh is getting a primetime spot over a team like the Panthers is beyond me because they're equally as good at this point as they are.
I think you
Do
have
not
to
try to tell me otherwise.
You have to consider the players on the team. People want to watch Aaron Rodgers play. People want to watch, well, Pittsburgh not anymore. But,
yeah.
And the thing with Carolina is they haven't been historically good, and we don't even know if Cam Newton's going to play this year. He probably will, but it's not confirmed. And when you make these matchups before the draft even happens, you have to go based on last year and on the rosters they currently have. And so I don't disagree with their picks.
I think it could be good, though, to see, schedule games after the draft. I think that could be a good
I want
thing
to see the Bills play the Cardinals on Sunday night.
I don't think anyone wants to see that, just like Denver and Arizona last year.
That was ugly.
Oh, boy.
Twitch streamer and YouTube sensation Tyler Brevins, a.k.a. Ninja, was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world for 2019. Ninja joins athletes like LeBron James, Alex Morgan, and Tiger Woods on the list. Andrew, what does this say about esports, and do you think Ninja is deserving of this accomplishment?
1,000%. This is a huge honor because Ninja is the face of esports. Regardless of if he's the best or not, I'll let the nerds on Reddit decide that. But Twitch is revolutionizing. I'm angering everybody today. Twitch is revolutionizing how we watch sports. Sponsors, hosted streams. We see people like Tim the Tap Man. Congrats on the baby, Tim. Regardless of where they are, getting sponsored to stream NFL games and react to them. They're getting big-time partnerships. Ninja and Red Bull. I think Ninja is a big reason for this, though, because streamers can now actually make a sustainable living, and he's a big reason why they have the platform that they do.
Yeah, you said a lot of things I would think. So I want to read Juju Smith-Schuster's quote because he was the one who nominated Ninja.
What
to be in the
a
top
great
100.
person to get to write
his quote
quote
was
as
this.
well.
Ninja was huge in building up the credibility of esports. At the end of the day, Ninja is an absolute legend and someone to whom we owe a lot for making gaming what it is today. 100%. That's 100% true. He not only brought respect to the gaming community that there wasn't there before, he made it more watched as a whole, and not just Fortnite, not just Twitch. Gaming as a whole owes a lot to Ninja.
One of the OG Halo streamers as well.
Yeah, that's true. He's come a long way.
H1Z1 a lot, But Ninja, absolutely does.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for the quick hitters.
Don't go away, because when we come back, I'll be joined at the desk by Carson and Luis to discuss a major MLB injury. New York Yankees right fielder Aaron Judge went down injured during Saturday's game against the Kansas City Royals. Judge is their 11th player on New York's injury list this year. That in mind, I'm joined at the desk by Luis Mueller and Carson Blythe to discuss whether or not these injuries will come back and haunt New York in the fall. So Luis, will it haunt them in the fall?
Absolutely not. The team is too good, and right now they're all hurt and they're still playing pretty well. They're 12-10 on the season. Right? Actually, before I get into all the records and stuff, let's look at the players who are hurt.
Please.
You have Andujar, Betances, Gregorius, Hicks, Judge, Montgomery, Sanchez, Severino, Stanton, Tulo. Those are the main ones. Ellsbury counts, but who cares?
Don't disrespect him like that.
They're all hurt. They're all starters, yet they're still 12-10. They're still doing pretty good. I wouldn't say great, but they're doing pretty good. Better than the Boston Red Sox, I'll tell you that. I wouldn't say the Red Sox are the competitor, but I'd say they're doing better than the defending world champions with the AAA squad.
All I have to say is, sure, they're doing really well with their AAA squad, but injuries hurt. You've seen it in the early 2010s with the Texas Rangers. They missed an entire year of playoffs because their team just wasn't there. You can't be good if your star players don't play, especially if you're in the AL East. If it's the AL Central, sure, you can get by. But the AL East has the Boston Red Sox who could come back. They have too much talent on their roster. And you have the Tampa Bay Rays who are playing like lightning. And they're too good. They're too smart, and they're too good for you guys to come back and make a playoff spot.
Okay, just to tell you that they're not going to be out for too long. The latest it is Didi Gregorius, who's potentially out until August with Tommy John. Jordan Montgomery's out to July. Judge is to be determined. Hicks, May. Gregorius, June to August, like I said. Betances, June. Andujar, May. Stanton, May. Tulo, May. Severino, July. They're coming back soon. And this team, if they could just keep up this pace for now and stay above 500, they're going to be fine. I promise you that. They're going to be fine. They're getting all their starters back very soon, and they're going to turn it around just like last year. They started off 12-10, I believe it was, and in a year ago today, 12-10, and they ended up finishing with 100 wins.
But what happens is you don't get where you want to be. Think about when the Cubs, and they wouldn't call up Chris Bryant because they want another year of arbitration. They were the second wild card, despite being arguably the best team in that entire division. What's going to happen is the Yankees will probably make the wild card, and they're going to have a one-game playoff to prove it.
They've won it 2 years in a row.
They have, but your luck can run out eventually. Someone's going to have a good start,
It's
and
not
you're going
luck,
to be
it's
kicked
skill.
off.
It's skill. That team, that roster is talented. It's one of the most talented rosters in the league.
So let's say you throw out Sevy. Sevy throws out and you throws 5 innings, 2-run ball. But then you have some other random team, the Oakland Athletics, throw out Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea throws a shutout, beats you, you're out of the postseason.
That roster is that lineup, let alone the roster, is too deep to throw a shutout. You have Stanton, Judge, and Sanchez in the 3-4-5 hole, let alone Gregorius probably in the 6. You have Hicks leading off. Who else? You have Gregorius, I said, Andujar, DH.
And in the postseason, pitching wins.
Well, that's all the time we have from the Diamond. While we hope for a speedy recovery, Matt will hit the racetrack with David Flint and Alex Mancuso to discuss the start of the Formula One season.
Three races down, 18 to go in the 2019 Formula One season. Mercedes and Ferrari look to be the two dominant teams again this year, and the midfield battle is shaping up to be extremely competitive. I'm here with special guest Alex Mancuso and our F1 expert David Flint to make sense of all the twists and turns we've seen so far this season. So David, does Red Bull have a chance to steal a win from the Silver Arrows or the Prancing Horses?
In short, no, and in long, very much so, no. Mercedes and Ferrari are just too good. The gap they have engineering-wise, not to mention driver-wise, between you've got Hamilton, who is arguably the best Formula One driver of all time. Sorry, Michael Schumacher fans. You've got Bottas, who is a more than serviceable second driver at Mercedes and finishes second or third with regularity. Vettel, the consummate veteran at Ferrari, just doing what he does. And Charles Leclerc, been really impressive in that Ferrari thus far. Could have won the second race if not for a mechanical problem pretty late in that one. But Max Verstappen's really having to overdrive the car, which he does a lot, but he's doing it more this year than he has in the past. Red Bull's got the new Honda engine, which it still baffles me why they decided to make that move, because it makes absolutely no sense. So in short, Red Bull's not going to get a win.
I'm going to have to disagree because right now, Ferrari and Mercedes are going head-to-head for the top spot, but Red Bull is on the rise. Max Verstappen has continually been in P3 or in P4 at the finish line. Now, Gasly, the second Red Bull driver, started in Australia, finishing in 11th place, but then in Bahrain, he moved up to 8th place, and then in China, he finished 6th place, setting the fastest lap record as well. And so Gasly's on the rise now, and Ferrari has been unreliable these past 3 races with mechanical failures, such as what you mentioned with Leclerc in Bahrain, and that's going to cause an opening for Max Verstappen to chip away at them. And once Max Verstappen takes out one of the giants like Vettel or Leclerc, that's going to create an opening for Gasly to come in and give that extra momentum to take one of the top spots. So right now, Red Bull has continually had both drivers finish in both races. Gasly's on the rise right now, and that's why I think they can take down Ferrari. Mercedes is a different story just because they've continually been at the top of their game these last 3 races, but we're still only 3 races in. But I wouldn't count Red Bull out just yet.
Mercedes 3 wins. Lewis Hamilton, you mentioned David, 2 wins by himself, representing his team. Which team has surprised you most in the midfield, either good or bad? Alex, we'll start with you.
So the team that surprised me the most for bad, honestly, is Renault. Preseason testing, they were one of the hottest teams. Nico Hülkenberg, the German driver, set some of the fastest times in preseason testing. And then they also got Daniel Ricciardo, who is arguably one of the best drivers of his generation, but they just haven't followed through. They've never had a race, Renault has never had a race where both drivers have been able to finish. They both have either backed out due to technical failures in Bahrain, or one or the other has to bow because of mechanical failures. And so when you have great talent behind the wheel like Hülkenberg and Ricciardo, you need that expertise in the pit crews and in the mechanics and in the car to back that up. And Renault just has been dropping the ball and has failed to capitalize on their 2 drivers' extreme talent.
They've got talent, but they've had reliability issues, as you said, much the same with McLaren, who's in a very strange spot. They finally got rid of what Fernando Alonso used to call the GP2 engines of Honda, and it hasn't fixed a thing, it seems. Carlos Sainz has basically no pace, has failed to finish a couple races, doesn't have any points yet. Lando Norris has been a bright spot, taking over Stoffel Van Dorn's seat from last year. He's got 8 points on the year, and he's out-qualified his more veteran teammate Sainz a few times, but McLaren just is in a strange spot, and it seems like they're putting a lot more of their resources on Fernando Alonso's Indy 500 effort, which comes out of the same shop and same brain trust with Zach Brown at McLaren. And we know Fernando Alonso's talent. That doesn't need to be debated.
So very quickly before we go, guys, which team wins the Constructors' Championship? It's going to be a team name. David?
It's going to be Ferrari.
Mercedes.
Alex?
It's going to be
All right.
Mercedes.
Two different answers there. Well, there's the checkered flag, but do not go anywhere. Up next, our NFL draft experts will be joining me and Andrew to tackle the offseason's most anticipated event.
This year's NFL draft is anticipating a high number of defensive linemen to be picked in the first round, and I'm joined by our NFL experts, Drew Gentry and Ennis Warlick, to break down the possible picks. So before we get started, guys, we're going to talk about our first pick, Quinnen Williams. Matt, what you got?
Quinnen Williams from the University of Alabama ran a 4.83 40-yard dash, had a 30.5-inch vertical jump, and a 112-inch broad jump at the combine. He was an All-American, first-team All-SEC, and won the Outland Trophy for the best college football interior lineman in the nation. Andrew, back to you.
So, Ennis, where do you think Quinnen Williams is going to end up?
God, I hope he goes to the Oakland Raiders. I'm sorry. That might be just wishful thinking, but look at it like this. Now, a lot of people that followed the Oakland Raiders in the last draft know that they drafted P.J. Hall and Mo Hurst for that interior lineman spot. But they're so bad in the pass rush. They need a pass rush. And whether it's coming from the interior or the outside, they need it bad. Quinnen Williams, a beast of an athlete. I think he's the most consistent linebacker as far as his production last year. Just a great get-off, a great player.
I agree. I do think Oakland's going to fit it. One, he fits their personality
Absolutely.
that they want in Oakland. They want kind of that bad boy mentality. He's just so aggressive. You saw that in the playoffs for college football. But also, the last time they drafted a defensive lineman in the first round was 2003 with Tyler Brayton. Brayton only played 5 years with Oakland, so they have a little bit of a past, and they need to get back on track. And that defense is needs help.
And the other thing that I like about Quinnen Williams is that he fills that need in run defense, and that he can fill up gaps and he can just sit there and force them and funnel them into the inside. But what he also does is, again, he provides that pass rush. Great production rushing the passer last year. He's a great fit for this Oakland Raider team. I really hope they get him.
So we're going to move on to Ohio State's Nick Bosa. Matt?
Nick Bosa from the Ohio State University went a 4.79 40 at the combine, put up 29 reps on the bench press, and had a 33.5-inch vertical jump. 2 years ago, he was the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. However, he only played in 3 games this season. Andrew, back to you.
So, Drew, where's Bosa going to end up?
Bosa's going to San Francisco. He's going to be on the West Coast with his brother.
Yeah.
They're just going to live it up down in Cali. You know how that goes. But one thing about San Francisco is they've wasted 3 first-round draft picks on defensive linemen in 2015, 16, and 17.
Absolutely.
They learned from their mistakes from drafting Pac-12 defensive linemen, and they went all the way across back over to the East Coast.
Yep.
And they learned that those boys play different. And I think Nick Bosa, if he goes there, he changes that defensive front in such a strong way because he's so just overpowering. He's fast. He has great moves, great feet. He'll swim move anybody, and he'll get past, and he's going to hurt a quarterback.
I've got to agree with that assessment. I think he's going to go to San Francisco, and I think he's going to be a great spot. You think about what their pass rush is right now. They have Solomon Thomas, who was abysmal last year, but you have also DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead to pair with him as well. And then they went out and got Dee Ford also. So Nick Bosa, a great player. Of course, only played 3 games. A little bit of a red flag there. But what I like about Bosa is exactly he's a beast, and he showed you what he could do in those 3 games. And I think he might be better than his brother.
So do you guys think this would be San Francisco's strongest defensive line in a while if they drafted Bosa, or?
Oh, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. I mean,
Do you think you put him in contention with the Rams in the West?
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Wild
but
card, maybe?
Garoppolo still has to prove himself first off. Garoppolo's got to prove himself and stay healthy for a season. And their defense has a lot more work to be done than just one position. And
Right.
a rookie can impact the game, but one position.
They still have a little bit of kinks to work out in that linebacking core and also the secondary, but I think they're going to be well on the way if they get somebody like Nick Bosa.
All right, final defensive lineman of this block, Ed Oliver, Houston. Matt.
Ed Oliver from the University of Houston, Texas native, put up 32 reps on the bench press at the combine, a 36-inch vertical jump, and a 120-inch broad jump. He did not run the 40. He's a 3-time first-team All-American, won the Outland Trophy in 2017, and in May 2018, Todd Baker projected him to be the first overall pick in this year's draft. Andrew, back to you.
Ennis, where's Ed Oliver going?
So the funny thing about Ed Oliver is that if you were looking at mock drafts, way too early mock drafts, I should say, in December, January, people were saying that Oliver was going to be the #1 pick. Then you look at mock drafts about in March, April, you're looking at him sliding all the way down, possibly out of the first round. Now we're getting buzzed that he's back in the top 5. So I'm going to have to go with him going to the New York Jets. He could fit in a lot of different areas, but I think that the New York Jets need him. The New York Jets really heralded themselves on just that pass rush and just that D-line a few years ago with Leonard Williams, paired with Muhammad
Looking
Wilkerson.
just as good this year, potentially.
Exactly,
Steals.
and you know, Ed Oliver, I think, is again a very polarizing prospect. Of course, had that injury history, and of course is a little bit undersized. But look, if you watch his tape, he's so agile, he's so athletic. Really does what you need him to do at a defensive tackle spot, and I think he's going to fit well.
I'm going to disagree. I think he is going to end up in Tampa Bay.
Really?
Alongside Vita Vea and Gerald McCoy.
Wow.
That defensive line would be phenomenal, and that's the one missing piece. If you have two predominant pass rushers in Vea and McCoy, and then you throw in Oliver, how athletic does that front become? Also, McCoy drafted in 2010. Last time a first-round draft pick by the Bucks was a defensive lineman. See how that has worked out. The one before that was Warren Sapp in 1995. So they have a history of drafting these linemen and developing them into something, even if they do go somewhere else and play. I think that Oliver in Tampa Bay, along with the new coaching staff, is going to be a lot different.
So I'm going to have to respectively disagree with Drew here.
All right,
and there's a
bring it
reason
on.
why. So look, as he said, Vita Vea was drafted just last year. Was injured a good portion of the season, but when he played very well. Now, why would you put him next to Gerald McCoy, next to Vita Vea, if you've already attempted to trade Gerald McCoy?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to take him because he's getting older. Nobody wants to give the assets needed to take him. I don't think they really need him. I just don't.
See, but if you're trying to get rid of McCoy, also he'll still teach somebody underneath him. He's not that kind of guy. He wants to help leadership, but he just wants out, or people want him out.
The other thing that you have to look at is, look, Tampa Bay has some holes on their defense. So if they're looking at best player available, I think that makes sense. But they need linebacking. If Devin White's still on the board, somebody in the secondary,
I was just going to say,
why.
Ennis, what do you think about Devin White for Tampa potentially, or
I
the
think
Jets? that
would be a potential game changer. If you look at what Mel Kiper said this man could be a Ray Lewis type player.
A Ray Lewis type
A
player.
Ray Lewis type player. Now, I don't know if I'd go that far, but he is somebody that can change the locker room, gets all over the field. I think he reminds me a little bit of Roquan.
Another
Roquan
quick
Smith last
question,
year.
though. Do you think if the Jets pulled through with Ed Oliver, they could have one of the best, if not the best, front seven in the league?
I don't think they'd have the best front seven, but
Or
I think
defense in general?
Look, they're on their way. I will say
They're on
that
their way.
they are on their way.
Might have been a little bit too hot of a take.
They have this offseason the Jets have done phenomenally, and
They've
if
done-
they
they've had a
draft
very good
well,
offseason.
they have a potential chance to take over the AFC East in the next couple of
In
years.
due time.
In about
Right.
2 or 3 years, until Brady actually falls off.
That I can agree with.
A lot left to go, but that's all the time we have left for the big boys. When we come back, Matt and the rest of our experts will discuss the top QBs in the draft.
Aim the cameras, hit the lights, and cue the music. It's draft day here at 101 Sports. Hello, everybody. Matt Apple back with Brad Clear and Will Burns for some 101 Sports draft analysis. Guys, how you doing?
I'm excited to be here. Draft day, baby.
Absolutely, me too. We're in quarterbacks, all right? Okay with that, quarterbacks? All right, so Kyler Murray is our first quarterback, and my beautiful co-host, Andrew Mandelis, has some information on him. Andrew?
Well, everybody knows about Kyler Murray, everybody and their grandma, 2018 Heisman Trophy Award winner, and he set some records. Second most total yards out of Heisman Trophy winners, highest pass efficiency rating, and the first Heisman winner to wear the jersey number 1. Matt, back to you.
All right, Andrew, thank you for that. So, guys, Kyler Murray, projected number 1 overall pick. Brad, go ahead. What do you think?
So I think it's the biggest lock and foregone conclusion of this draft that he's going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. It's another discussion whether it's the right move, considering Josh Rosen is there. They traded up to get him at number 10, Cliff Kingsbury. That's a whole separate discussion. You look at Murray as a quarterback, a lot of people like to look at the height. The thing I look at is his frame. Arizona is the worst offensive line in the league. He's going to get hit a ton. As far as his positives, though, he's got a great arm. He's accurate, makes big throws in the pocket, on the run. He's not a runner. He's a quarterback who's a thrower, who can run and extends plays with his legs. I think he's the only quarterback in this draft, at least I think, that can be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL.
Kyler Murray, definitely a good chance he goes to the Cardinals, but I think Cliff Kingsbury, obviously very sold on him. I don't know if the rest of the Cardinals organization is. A lot of this is about optics, and it's not a good look if the Cardinals just say, we're ready to move on from Josh Rosen after 1 year.
Well, it's happening.
They took him with the 10th pick last year. I do agree there is a good chance it's going to happen, but the argument can be made that the Raiders are going to take him at 4, and the Cardinals take a guy like Quinnen Williams or Nick Bosa with the first pick, who have potential to be the best player in this draft. As for the Raiders, I think they're not sold on Derek Carr. John Gruden behind closed doors doesn't seem sold on him. He's not their quarterback of the future. I think Kyler Murray, the mix with him and Antonio Brown is very promising.
Well,
so
if it ever, it's not going to, so we're just playing hypothetical here. If
Exactly.
it ever got to a point where the Cardinals were not picking Kyler Murray first off, they would have irreparably damaged their relationship with Josh Rosen, and 2, it would become a bidding war to trade up to 1 to get Kyler Murray. But as you said, like in the hypothetical, him on the Raiders, I think it would be a great fit.
Oh,
'Cause as
absolutely.
we've talked about, extends plays with his legs, great arm. You have a dynamic receiver like Antonio Brown. But again, I think it's the biggest lock in this draft. He's a Cardinal.
I see what you're saying. I just don't know if the Cardinals want the rest of the NFL, as well as their fan base, to think that they don't know what they're doing, because moving up in the draft last year, going with Rosen with the 10th pick, they're saying he's their quarterback in the future.
I wouldn't say that it shows they don't know what they're doing. What they're doing is they're tailoring their offense and team to the head coach they just hired, who's an offensive-minded head coach. And really, all this stuff in the last few days about whether or not decided on the pick or whatever, it's basic drumming up value, trying to get the biggest offer for Josh Rosen.
Very well could be.
So you guys mentioned Josh Rosen. We will get to him later. Quickly before we pass on Kyler Murray, is his height an issue? Only 5'10". Is that going to be an issue in the NFL?
Like I said, I think it's more the frame than the height.
I think it very well could be. I mean, you see guys like Drew Brees, Baker Mayfield have success, but there's only a few names
Russell
there.
Wilson,
So.
big contract too, just signed that.
Yeah.
All right, Kyler Murray, projected number 1 overall pick. Next up, Dwayne Haskins. Andrew, what do you got?
Potomac High School's own, shout out Maryland right there. 2-time Big Ten champion, back-to-back. Big Ten Player of the Year last year, 2019 Rose Bowl champion and MVP, and after starting 0 games in 2017, he set the single-season passing record in touchdowns and passing yards for the Buckeyes.
All right, Andrew, two-time Big Ten champion Dwayne Haskins. Will, what do you think about him?
I think the Giants are going to take him with the 6th pick in the draft. He led Ohio State to a 13-1 record last year. He has a higher completion percentage, higher pass yards, and a better TD to interception ratio than any other quarterback in the draft. That's including Kyler Murray. So the argument can be made that he is the best quarterback prospect in this draft. Yet Kyler Murray is projected to go number 1, and Haskins isn't. But he has a good frame. He's 6'3" compared to Kyler Murray, 5'11". He's mobile. He has a good arm.
Mobile?
I believe so.
All right. I think where Dwayne Haskins, when we talk about landing spots, to me, it comes down to 2 places, and that's Cincinnati and Washington. I look at Cincinnati at 11, went to Ohio State. They just hired a new head coach in Zach Taylor, a former quarterback's coach. I think it largely depends on 2 things. Does Josh Rosen get traded to Washington?
Sure.
Or does Drew Lock get past Denver, which at this point seems like a possibility? And at that point, would Cincinnati prefer Lock or Haskins? Would Washington try to trade up with maybe the Lions at 8 to get in front of them? But I think it ends up being Cincinnati or Washington. And I think in some form, those 2 teams end up, one getting Drew Lock and one getting Dwayne Haskins. But back to Haskins, I'm not crazy about him as a prospect. I look at him, I don't think there's one particular skill that projects to be a really elite skill.
That's fair.
I would not say he's mobile. He's not very accurate. I think his stats were a little inflated. I'm not saying he's a bad prospect, but if you look at acquiring a franchise quarterback, I think it's very hard to draft a guy who you really kind of look at his ceiling as being a mediocre quarterback right away.
Well, I think you got to look at this from the Giants' perspective. This guy's a New Jersey native, and he has come out and said he's willing to be the successor to Eli Manning and learn under him for a year. The Giants are looking at Dave Gettleman said, I don't know if he knows what he's doing, but he did say they're trying to take the Chiefs' approach with what they did with Patrick Mahomes.
But at the same time, he's made the whole big point of take the best player available no matter what.
And I want to touch on something you said quickly before we move on to the next quarterback. Dwayne Haskins is not a mobile quarterback, right? His 40 time is slower than some D linemen.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a problem?
Yes, I think so, because you don't have to be a mobile quarterback to be successful. But I look at him, and he's a guy who it's almost to the point where it's a detriment. And again, without there being an above-average skill, whether it being a big arm, being super accurate, I don't see a way he's ever better than around the 20th or so best quarterback in the NFL.
One thing I do know is that he's more mobile than Eli Manning, so
that's true.
That's
not
all,
that hard.
That's all I can say about that. Yeah.
JT Barrett, the only Ohio State quarterback in the NFL currently, he is on the Saints practice squad. Haskins would be the second. All right, we have one more quarterback, Daniel Jones. However, Andrew's left his post, so I will do the honors. Daniel Jones out of Duke started 36 games after Thomas tore his Achilles back in 2016. Guys, Daniel Jones out of Duke, what do you think about him?
I would not have Daniel Jones in the top 50 prospects in this draft. I think the fact that he's being considered in the first round is ridiculous. I think he's a lesser version of Josh Allen, and I was not a fan of Josh Allen last year. He's all traits and all physical tools, and Coach Cutcliffe without the production. He's not accurate. He has a big arm. That's it. He's tall. He's athletic. That's it. He's one of those guys who really looks at intangibles, looks at the physical traits and says, I can mold a quarterback into what I want. Then he's that. But I don't think there's enough production there. I don't think he's ever going to be a starting NFL quarterback. I think he's going to be a bust. Put that all together, though. The only team that I could see picking him in the first round would be the New York Giants at 17. I think he's going to get to 17. And at that point, it really matters whether do the Giants have him high on their board? Can they get a trade done for Josh Rosen? So if it's not the Giants at 17, I think it's very possible he can fall all the way out of the first round.
Definitely.
But if he's picked in the first round, I think it would be the Giants at 17.
Another team I think could pick him with the 15th pick is the Redskins. Not saying that I think they should, because I agree he's probably not a top 50 prospect in this draft. 60% completion percentage. Granted, his receivers weren't very good, and they didn't do a good job of getting open or catching balls for that matter. But the Redskins are kind of in dire needs right now. They don't have a very good QB depth right now. After Alex Smith goes down with that injury last year, he's not going to play next year.
If ever.
Yeah, exactly. They have Case Keenum, Colt McCoy.
But you have to look at it too. That would ensure that they have Daniel Jones higher on their board than perhaps both of Dwayne Haskins and Drew Lock, which I find very hard to believe. And then we also look at it. I think really what's going to dictate where Daniel Jones goes is where Josh Rosen goes.
Yeah.
Because if the New York Giants are able to complete a deal for Josh Rosen, that takes them out of Daniel Jones. And past the Redskins at 15, I don't see really there being a quarterback suitor unless a team like the Chargers wants to take him to be the backup to Phillip Rivers. They're in on Rosen trying to trade for him now. So, again, I think it really depends on where Rosen goes. But the fact that he's even being considered this high is ridiculous.
I agree.
The same thing happened with Josh Allen last year. Now, granted, he had a better year than most thought, but that accuracy issue was glaring. I think Daniel Jones is a worse prospect than that.
Absolutely.
And that issue is going to be there if he is drafted in the first round.
Duke
also.
has never had a quarterback taken in the first round. Daniel Jones would be the first. Guys, to wrap up, before we dip out of here, Josh Rosen, if he is traded, where's he going? Just give me a team name. Will?
I'm thinking Bengals, possibly Giants. I hope the Giants, but I'm going to say the Bengals.
Brad?
I'm going to say the Giants or the Chargers.
All right, well, that does it for our quarterback NFL draft analysis, but stick around. Up next, Andrew and I will talk about the weirdest player rivalries we've seen in sports. Jared Dudley versus Ben Simmons, Russell Westbrook versus Damian Lillard. Those are only two of the entertaining player rivalries we've seen take over this year's NBA playoffs. Everyone knows that teams can be rivals, but Andrew, what is your favorite player rivalry in all of sports history?
Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. This was the AFC matchup we wanted to see every year. We always got it. Brady usually got the upper hand when it came to big stakes games. But I know I was rooting for Peyton Manning the entire time,
Most people
even
were.
if the Colts did leave Baltimore all those years ago. Both are very accomplished. Brady has the rings. Manning has the stats. Which are more important? You decide, Matt.
That was always good. Even when Manning left to go to Denver, we still saw it occasionally. Mine was Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, something we saw start
Classic.
in college. Indiana State for Bird, Michigan State for Magic Johnson. They met in the 1979 NCAA title game. Ironically enough, Bird won that one. When they met in the NBA Finals, Magic won 5 head-to-head matchups and 2 of the 3 finals matchups. That was so great because we saw them transcend age, right? So they were in college. Now they're on 2 of the most storied franchises in the NBA playing each other. It's so perfect they ended up on the Celtics and Lakers because they would love to watch them go head-to-head for so many years.
Phenomenal rivalries, and we hope to see some of these bloom with the young talent we have in the future. Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
That's all the time I have for this episode of 101 Sports.
Special thanks to all of our producers, talent, and crew, and of course to the viewer for tuning in.
If you missed anything, be sure to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all at 101 Sports.
And until next time,
Whose side are you on?